When Matthew Perry passed away suddenly, the world took note. He'd been looking forward to a future focused on finding love and helping others fight addiction. Here's a look at what Perry overcame to get there. By the time Matthew Perry released his memoir, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, stories of his addictions and time in rehab had been in the headlines for a while. But in talking with GQ about going back to read what he'd written before recording the audiobook, Perry said, "I read it and cried and cried and cried. I went, oh my God, this person has had the worst life imaginable. And then I realized, this is me I'm talking about." In the book, Perry comes face to face with some defining childhood moments, including being prescribed barbiturates by a doctor when he was just 30 days old because he was crying.
And they gave it to me for 30 days, so from 30 to 60, and they would laugh because, stone babies are fun.
Perry opened up to the Los Angeles Times saying, "It's hard to blame my parents, but when I was detoxing, I thought, why would you give barbiturates to a kid who was crying?" Perry's parents had been separated for 4 years by the time he was 5 years old, so when it was time for him to visit his dad in LA, his mother put him on a plane in Montreal by himself and sent him on his way. Perry wrote, "Not having a parent on that flight is one of the many things that led to a lifelong feeling of abandonment." Perry's numerous trips to rehab and history of drug and alcohol use had already been making headlines long before Friends ended, and when he spoke with the New York Times in 2002, he made it clear that it wasn't fame that sent him down the path he'd found himself on. Fame was tricky though. Perry explained, "When it happens, it's kind of like Disneyland for a while. For me, it lasted about 8 months, this feeling of, I've made it, I'm thrilled, there's no problem in the world. And then you realize that it doesn't accomplish anything. It's certainly not filling any holes in your life." As a teenager, his longing for fame came from a place of self-doubt and loneliness. It was then that he began turning to alcohol to numb his personal pain. Perry has said he became an alcoholic with his first drink, telling ABC News, "I lay in the grass and just was in heaven."
I thought to myself, this must be the way that normal people feel all the time. And I thought that at 14.
Sadly, once Perry found fame, it didn't fix what he thought it would fix, and by that time he was already deep into his addiction. In an interview with Tom Power, he said, "Alcoholism did not care that I was on Friends." Perry's first trip to rehab was in 1997, and by 2000 he had parameters in place.
I made a rule that I would never drink or take anything at work, so I would never do that.
However, at times he would show up so hungover that everyone knew what was going on. Countless recovery centers will say that the first step is admitting there's a problem, and Perry has been very candid about his experiences with drug and alcohol addiction. He began drinking at 14, then years later came the pills. After the second season of Friends, he was involved in a jet ski accident and was prescribed painkillers. Perry wrote, "As the pill kicked in, something clicked in me, and it's been that click I've been chasing the rest of my life." Perry told the New York Times that he soon knew exactly how many pills he was going to need to get through every meeting, every outing, every day, explaining, "When you're a drug addict, it's all math." He quickly reached a point where he needed 55 Vicodin to get through the day. When 8 different doctors weren't prescribing enough, he got desperate. He'd schedule meetings with real estate agents, going to houses in the price range of a massive television star. Once there, he'd slip off to the bathroom and rummage through medicine cabinets. Perry recalled to GQ, "I counted on the fact that no one would think that Chandler went through my medicine cabinet and stole from me." When Friends said that final goodbye, it was the 4th most watched finale in TV history, with around 52.5 million viewers. It's tough to overestimate just how important the show was, and Perry was there for all of it. But for all the millions of viewers the show netted, there was one person who just couldn't watch it. When Perry spoke with Tom Power in 2022, he confessed that he'd never been able to watch the show because his fluctuating appearance brought back memories he didn't want to revisit. Perry revealed, "I didn't watch the show and haven't watched the show because I could go drinking, opiates, drinking, cocaine, like I could tell season by season how I looked." That interview was broadcast in November 2022, and Perry added that he thought he might finally be in a place where he could sit down and watch it. He wanted to know what made it so enduring, and to see what so many millions of people had fallen in love with. Don't Look Up was precisely the sci-fi movie the world needed in 2021, and it had a stellar cast, but it didn't have Matthew Perry. Even though he filmed the scene, Perry didn't make the final cut. Why? He had had a very dangerous near-death experience. At the time, he was struggling with both opioids and alcohol, and in the one scene he filmed, he'd just taken 1,800 milligrams of hydrocodone. For reference, the Mayo Clinic says the standard adult dose is 10 milligrams. Perry ended up going to a Swiss rehab clinic where he was scheduled to undergo back surgery, which didn't go as planned. The anesthetic put him in cardiac arrest. Perry wrote, "I was told that some beefy Swiss guy really didn't want the guy from Friends dying on his table and did CPR on me for the full 5 minutes, beating and pounding my chest. If I hadn't been on Friends, would he have stopped at 3 minutes? The CPR broke 8 of his ribs and he had to bow out of the movie." Perry dated some high-profile women, including Julia Roberts and Gabrielle Allen. Still, he never married or had children.
Oh, no, don't go. I've scared you. I've said too much. I'm hopeless and awkward and desperate for love.
He admitted to GQ that no matter how well things were going, he'd always been the one to break things off, saying, "I'm deathly afraid that they will find out that I'm not enough, that I don't matter, and that I'm too needy, and they'll break up with me and that will annihilate me, and I'll have to take to drugs and that will kill me." Obviously, his past has left him with a lot of regrets, and he'd known for years what he wanted. In a 2014 interview with Time Out London, Perry said he thought he was in a position to concentrate on what mattered to him, sharing, "My goals are more in life than work, meeting the right woman, starting a family. I was never destined to happen," and according to Perry's memoir, not settling down with Lizzie Kaplan was one of his biggest regrets. Most memoirs begin at the beginning, but Perry took a different approach, starting with 2019 when he found himself in the hospital with a burst colon. When asked why he started with the medical emergency and the following 5-month hospitalization, Perry told people that he wanted readers, especially those who were dealing with addiction, to know right away that they weren't alone in facing the darkness. Perry explained, "That's the time I really came close to my life ending. I was put on an ECMO machine, which does all the breathing for your heart and your lungs. Every doctor says it's a Hail Mary. No one survives that. So the big question is why? Why was I the one that survived?" When he was first admitted to the hospital, his chances of survival weren't just slim, they were almost non-existent. Doctors estimated that he had about a 2% chance of pulling through. Perry wrote, "I will have to live out the rest of my days knowing that my mother and others heard those words. My greatest fear had come true, which is that I did this to myself." It's easy to envy the rich and famous, especially when they show up on television every week with perfect hair, designer clothes, and massive, unattainable New York City apartments. Even knowing that the actor isn't the character they play, it's tough to assume they're living anything but the good life. But in 2022, when people asked him when he found himself most happy, Perry replied, "Happiness is tough for me. I have moments of joy, certainly, but long stretches of happiness? I don't know about that. I think it's because I won't allow myself to have it. I always think something's going to go wrong." It makes sense. Perry wrote in his memoir that one of the moments when he recalled being not just happy but euphoric was also one that led him further down the path of addiction. He recalled being high and driving a Mustang convertible across the desert, saying, "I remember thinking, if this doesn't kill me, I'm doing this again." While it might seem like the star of one of the biggest television shows on the planet would have his pick of paramours, more than once Perry found himself with a woman who was more interested in his money than in him. It was a situation he just didn't want to be in again. In a conversation with the New York Times about his memoir, Perry confirmed that some of the toughest parts of his life to look back on were the relationships. They may have failed for a variety of reasons, but he hadn't given up. In the meantime, he said, "I'm lonely, but there's a couple of people on the payroll to keep me safe." That's a pretty heartbreaking thing to have to face, and Perry wasn't shy about admitting that all the money in the world couldn't replace the family he'd always hoped to have. When people asked him to describe his typical day, he said that although he had friends he regularly played pickleball with and invited to parties, surrounding himself with those friends was a way to fight loneliness. Perry shared, "If you want to feel lonely, watch a movie in a screening room by yourself. It's awful. You have so much money, you look over and there's nobody there."
We all haven't been together, the 6 of us, in such a long time.
What are you talking about? We're all together right now.
Mon, Chandler's not here.
When Perry's death was announced, tributes poured in from people who'd been touched not only by friends, but more importantly, his candid talk about addiction and recovery. No cause of death was immediately confirmed, but it was tentatively ruled a drowning with no foul play involved. Perry was 54. His death came just a year after he released his memoir, and very nearly a year to the day after a GQ interview where Perry said that he felt he was at long last in a decent place in life. Not only did he really feel good about being able to help others through addiction and into recovery, but he'd even come to terms with the fact that his body was covered with scars. They were scars from the surgeries that had kept him alive. While Perry admitted that he did still relapse, he knew it wasn't the end. It moved his sobriety date, but it didn't remove the lessons learned. He said, "I understand more now. I'm less ruled by fear now. One of the things I learned is I can handle when bad things happen now. I'm resilient. I am a strong man and I never gave myself credit for that, ever. But now I'm slowly starting to. I believe that I am enough. I believe that I'm not too needy, and I believe that I do matter." If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. 4357.